All right, it says I'm live. I'm gonna believe it. If you hear a tap 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 tapping, it's there's a I got a mirror that I put out there in the trees. I don't know, a year ago, and it's kind of grown into the trees. I only ever use it when I'm gonna do like what I did today, which is to trim my beard. Anyways, there's these jays that are out there that like that mirror, and they get on it and they tap on it, tap, 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 tap. And I haven't stopped them. It's kind of cool to watch them. It's irritating. You can hear it. One of them in particular loves looking at itself so much. It just sits there and tap, 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 tap. All right, Daniel. Good to see you. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael Bunker. This is the Bunker Nation Show. I'm going to be your host for the evening. My hair is a little out of sorts, and I'm a little out of sorts because I came down here at the last minute because I was reading in the hammock. That's what I was doing. It's a little hot. I got my Grizzly Territory shirt on. It was sent to me. I think Pat up in Montana sent this. Oh, there she is, Pat from Montana. So I got my Grizzly Territory. I think it's Montana Grizzlies or something to do with Montana. Anyways, hope everybody's doing okay. Come on in here, pile on in here. Don't worry about social distancing. Just funnel through and everybody get in here, get your seats. Type into the comment section where you are. Hello, Ethan. I think Ethan's in Alaska. Hava's here. Hello. I think she's in Florida. Daniel's in Michigan. I'm starting to get these things down. Amen. I wish I could find like-minded people to commune with between moms gathering in the neighborhood. That's good. Yeah, I'm the same way. It's one of the reasons I like being here. Hello, Prosper, Texas. Good to see you. All right, everybody, hit the like button whenever you get an opportunity. Hello, Oklahoma. Good to see you guys. Got some things we're going to talk about today, but as always, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I did a little work on the beard, and so it makes me even look thinner than I really actually am, or than I have looked. Hello, Scott. Scott's down in, I think he's in South Texas somewhere, down by the Gulf Coast somewhere. Anyway, so I don't ever see myself because I don't even look in the mirror that the bird is pecking on right now. And so when I come down here and I look, this is me in the hammock reading a book on Daniel and the Revelation, the prophecies written by Isaac Newton. I think I talked about that the other day. It's my second time through this book. I read it maybe 15 years ago. And so I'm reading again. It's really good. I don't know if I could recommend it because I don't know if most people could read it. Somebody just pinged me. You're not supposed to ping me after 7 o'clock because everybody knows I'm doing a show. Hello, Richard. An Odessa boy like me, living in a town, the center of the universe. L-Town, Lubbock, center of the universe. Hello, Richard. So I don't know who's pinging me. Should be pinging me after 7 o'clock. Almost certainly it is somebody who should know better. No, it's somebody I just blocked. How did they ping me if I blocked them? All right. I unfollowed a bunch of people today, and I blocked a bunch of people, and I'm probably not done. People are irritating me. All right. So hello, everybody, again. I'm glad you're here. I get a little bit out of sorts when I get down here at the last minute. I don't know if I have enough power. I don't know if I have enough light. I don't know if everything's plugged in right. And thanks to Pat, I know that the audio is working, which sometimes doesn't work. And so I put as the title of this video that you need to let the cities go. And that's going to bother some people because a lot of you live in cities. A lot of you live in big cities. You might be bothered by the fact that Michael Bunker's saying, blow off the cities. Stop worrying about it. Well, I need to tell you something. I've been saying the same thing for over 25 years. So what I'm going to say today is nothing new. If you've known me, if you've read my books, if you've listened to my sermons, if you've listened to me preach or teach for 25 years, I've told you, get out of cities. They're not safe. They're not intelligent. They are designed to get you to farm out all of your natural rights and responsibilities to other people so that you can concentrate on comforts and selling your children. That's into the system. That's exactly what they're for. That's what they're designed for now. Don't get mad at me. Avery, I know you're trying. If you're trying to get out, and I'm still telling other people to get out. But here's the thing. The cities have been at war with you longer than you've been alive. The desire, which is, of course, if you go back to my video last week about pattern recognition and being able to pan back and to see some realities that don't appear when you just look at individualities. Hello, Oregon. Good to see you. Do the suburbs count? I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. So you have to have the ability through time, through literature, through history, through all the things we're supposed to know. You got to be able to pan back. So I want to just, and I've done a few lessons on the history of the city. We've talked about that, and I'm going to maybe do a little review here. But here's the thing. Going back to 2016, election night and after that, and this is not going to be a political talk, and for those of you who happen to be Republicans, do not for an instant think that because of what I'm going to say, which is just a recitation of the true historical truth of the last 4 or 5 years, that I'm somehow on your side. Because I'm probably not. Some things I am, some things I'm not. But here's the thing. The day or the night of the election, and after that, it stopped being about ideas. It stopped being about why people voted one way or another. It stopped being about politics per se, and it was 100% about where you lived. Prior to that, when the media and pretty much everybody else was saying 98% possibility Hillary was going to win, it was all about things. It was all about stuff. It was all about, who's going to get the most stuff and do the most stuff and all. The night of the election, and the next day and all the days after that, it became a war on the countryside. People were writing articles like, how did we miss it? How did we not know what was going to happen? How did we completely get it so wrong? Well, what we didn't realize is that there's these people, once you break outside the loop, that you break outside the highways that surround the city, and you get out there to where the unclean people are, where there's people that have trailers and people like have sheds and stuff in them and have guns in their pickup trucks. All these idiots out there who don't live on top of each other. Those are the people that did this. Those are the people that did this. And then we saw these maps, right? Both sides pumping out these maps where this is blue and this is red and all that. This has not been a left and right thing for a very, very long time. The left and the right things are merely results. They're not causes. They don't get to the root of the difference. The reason that you see these enclaves of people who are massively pro-government, who are massively anti-individual freedom, is because those are where those people are who, but through history for thousands of years, have sold their rights and responsibilities, farmed them out, so that they can live in cohabitation in a way that allows them to specialize to such an extent that they peck on their dot and they have all the resources that they need without having any clue as to where those things come from, where salad comes from, where potatoes come from, other than a general idea. Somebody showed them a farm video when they were in school. But here's the thing. It's a rural versus an urban thing, and it always has been. That's the real divide, and the blue and the red and the politics of it are results. They're merely ways of displaying on a map the divide of how people think differently, how people live differently, and how people believe differently. There's so much that I could go into on this. But here's the thing. If you don't think that you've farmed out your security and your safety, all you have to do is look at what's going on right now in the arguments about police and all that. Even the concept that we have of modern police is very, very new. It didn't even exist, even in the Roman Empire, the idea of police. You had soldiers, but did you know soldiers weren't even allowed to be in the city of Rome? If they did, they had to leave all of the accoutrements of their soldierdom outside the city. The whole idea of the fact that Caesar crossed the Rubicon was he crossed it with an army. You weren't allowed to bring an army to the city. It wasn't allowed. Individuals, even in that city, believed that their freedom relied on them not being imposed upon by arms. What we're seeing today in the modern police state is a very, very new thing. But because of the state of the cities, their condition, and the moral condition of the people who are automatically attracted to that life, modern policing is a necessity. It has to exist. That's just one little issue. The differences are fundamental, but they've been at war with you for a very, very, very long time. The whole Industrial Revolution was a process. Pan back, and you'll see through history, even up into the early 1900s. Most people lived in the country. Most people provided a large portion of what they needed for their own survival. Most people. There was a hammer blows, wars, World War I, World War II, even going back farther. We had the Industrial Revolutions 1 and 2 that took jobs and moved or created jobs in the cities and made it to where people who lived in the countryside weren't able to continue doing that. The machines allowed people to farm more land with fewer people and fewer help, even though the food itself became degraded in its quality and mineral content and all those things. And so people had to move to the cities. These mass migrations to the cities that had been happening for generations were massively increased in the time from the Industrial Revolution and after. The people who are waving their flags and talking about America, America, America have zero clue what it took to build America. The independent yeoman farmer built America. The 100% of the rights and the responsibilities that are listed in the documents of American freedom are based on a rural population. They're addressed to a rural population, to people who were intelligent, who were educated, who these people knew 3 or 4 languages by the time they were 14 or 15 years old. Thomas Jefferson, the farmer, at 14 years old, could quote from any book that was in print in 4 different languages when he was 15 years old. That doesn't mean there weren't cities or that cities weren't fun places. And I'm not saying that I don't like them sometimes. I like to visit them every once in a while. I like to look at them just like I sometimes like to go to a zoo. I don't want to live there. And so here's the thing. There's some interesting things when you have the ability, when you learn the ability, and you can learn it, to pan back instead of staring in close in the microscope at things and making decisions, this or that. Hello, Danielle. Love you. I'm not yelling. I'm teaching. I'm wearing a grizzly shirt. Would a grizzly shirt person be yelling? So Pat says so many people think they're going to be raptured out of here and say we won't be here. They got a problem then. In some cases, the scriptures say that the tares are plucked out first and that they're bundled together. That doesn't sound like a city to you? Sounds like one to me, but I don't want to get into prophecy at this moment, even though I've already alluded to it. The thing is, when you have the ability to pan out, when you have the ability to look at things from the distance, did you know that almost all of the major cities of the world and 96, 97% of the people in the world live on major fault lines and on coastlines where almost 100% of natural disasters happen. But in fact, if you take tornadoes out of the picture, which happen everywhere, they're more numerous in some places, but tornadoes can happen everywhere, even in the ocean. But if you take tornadoes out of that, almost 100% of natural disasters happen along fault lines and on coastlines. Strangely enough, almost all of the major cities of the world are built along fault lines and along coasts. Almost all of them. And the reason why is because the fault lines are where the minerals were first found. That's where the first cities popped up, where the minerals were. And the reason the minerals were on the surface or easy to get to was because there are major fault lines there. Almost all of the major cities, other than a few I could name, are within a driving distance of a major coastline, riverfront, or some major coast where natural disasters, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, etc. happen. Isn't it interesting? All you have to do is be able to pull back. If you want to know if you go back to the beginning of civilization, if you want to go study the Roman Empire, I've got it right here in this book, somewhere here. I held it up the last time. Here it is. History of Rome and the History of Greece. You'll learn that the city, Rome, the city, Athens, lived by sucking in the resources, the natural resources of other continents, the natural resources of their own country, the natural resources of the countryside in such massive amounts to be able to feed the people who migrated to the cities because of their natural proclivity not to want to provide for themselves in a diverse way. In other words, they wanted to be able to do one thing, to be specialists. So Rome, there were highways. Some highways that still exist, they're still used. Those highways were for bringing the wealth of the entire known world into Rome. That means all of the wealth that was coming into Rome was from somewhere else. It was either robbed and stolen by war, it was taken by taxation, it was taken through mercantile theft. Through time, fewer and fewer people were able to make it living in the countryside. Throughout Western Europe, armies crisscrossed Europe for hundreds of years, raping the countryside as they went by, taking everything, movable cattle, crops. You may get a crop 1 out of 10 years because some army was coming by, Napoleon or somebody going through to someplace else, and they would just take your crop. Why? If you get rid of the cities, there's no reason for them to be there. So there's a lot of things to think about. Now, what's happened since 2016? There's been a mental, philosophical, and moral and spiritual war against the countryside because a small portion of the population that lives on the productive ability of the rest of the population believes that the people who live and aren't within sight of a city limit sign or in sight of a skyscraper are somehow inferior human beings who ought to be disenfranchised. That's not a political statement. I don't care who you vote for. This is just a factual recitation of events. They hate you. They hate you completely. And you're sitting there through your little box, your little window into the rest of the world, watching their world burn, and you're sad about it? You're upset about it? I'll tell you the truth. I'm upset about it. And I'm sad about it just because there are people there that don't know. There's people that are being beaten that don't know. There are people that are being hurt that don't know any better. But if they knew better, if you knew better, if the people out there understood that the city is not a place of respite, it's not a place to raise your family, it's not a place where anything other than depravity is ever going to be heralded, however much it's cool, however much you like it, however much you like the museums. That's what they are. They're places where sticks get bundled together or tears get bundled together to be burned. And so here's the thing. I'm not saying stop caring. I'm not saying stop having empathy. I'm just saying the solutions to what's coming down cannot be the rescue of the cities. It cannot be. All that's going to happen, let me tell you what's going to happen. Because a war is coming, and I don't think there's any way out of it. I don't want one. I'm nonviolent. I don't want to see one. I don't want one to happen in my lifetime at all. Richard, the only farmers that are still Democrats are ones that were Democrats 30, 40 years ago when they were subsisting on welfare. A lot of them still are, but a lot of them have learned better. Anyway, your solution, or the solution to what's going to happen, a war is coming, and it's going to take place mainly in those cities. It may drift out into the countryside, depending on how bad it gets. If it's only this war, if it's only the war that is being portrayed as already started in our cities right now, that's where it's going to take place. And after it's burned down, and after the fires go out, and after the ashes drift to wherever they're going, guess who's going to get called on to rebuild it? You. They're going to want you to rebuild it. They already do this. They already bail out the banks. They already bail out the car manufacturers. They already bail out all the big corporations. They're already doing it. Did you know that this pandemic has been the largest transfer of money from small, individually family-owned businesses and farms to the wealthiest corporations in the world in the history of the world? In the history of the world, the top 5 companies in America have made 80% of the profit since the pandemic started. It's a shift, a huge shift. Mom and pop businesses are going out of business. Small country businesses aren't making it. All that money's going to the people who are financing the war. And that's what's happening. I'm not saying anything different than I've been saying for 20 years. Here's what we have to admit. You have to admit, first of all, that you like it. I do. I love it. I love San Antonio. I love Austin. I don't like 6th Street, but I like a whole lot of stuff in Austin. I like a whole lot of people in Austin. I love the Riverwalk. I love New York City. I've been there several times. I walked the whole length and breadth and width of New York City. I love Chicago when I was there. I love Boston I've been to all of them. I've been to Seattle. Been to Portland multiple times. I loved LA. A year ago, I was in Hollywood. You have to admit you like it, you know? And once you admit you like it, here's the next step. You have to admit that human beings are capable of rationalizing any or justifying any behavior, any thought, or any error as long as it's in defense of something they like. That's the next step. There is a war coming, and I'm telling you this because, first of all, I hate being wrong. Doesn't happen very often, but I hate being wrong. So if there was a way not to say it, I would be saying it. But I'm watching what's happening, and I have yet to come up with a scenario where there's a way to back out of it. The people who are financing it, the people who are engaging in it, the antagonists are they've overplayed their hand. They seem to have no intent of unclimbing that rope. And the hysteria, I want to call it the mental imbalance in the minds of people who could go through the last couple of elections, and especially 2016, and then read polls and think, hey, we're going to win. You're right, Hava. They're great places to visit. That's what they were originally supposed to be, places you visit. Put your stuff in the truck, put your stuff in a trailer, put your stuff in a wagon, and you go there and you sell your stuff. You trade it, and then you go back home and you live free. You have responsibilities, your own provision, your own defense, the life and liberty and property God's entrusted to you. But when you move to a city, you farm all that out. You farm it out. That's somebody else's responsibility. And when it doesn't go the way you want, you just demand that someone else pay for it. You just demand that it get better. The whole idea that it's going to continue to get better is only based on the fact that there are resources outside of the city that can continually be tapped to make things better and better in the cities. Is anybody going to sit here and tell me that things are better in the countryside than they were 100 years ago? They used to ask all the time, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Are you? That was an election year question. Is the countryside better off than it was 1,000 years ago? 500 years ago? 300 years ago? For you idiots out there who are barking, oh, we got medicine. You don't know enough about history to even begin that conversation with me. You don't. The failure of your system is right in front of your face, and I would turn your face towards that and do a little pondering. They'll say, oh, well, back in the day, people only lived to be 35 years old. Not true. That's a trick of math. I've exposed that one for 15 years. I haven't found a single person that could argue with me about it. People live the same as long, probably longer than they did now. Unless they lived in a city, which is the only place that polls take place. Did you know that? How did they get it wrong in 2016? How in the world could they have gotten it so wrong? Well, let me ask you a question. If you live where I am, where you couldn't even shoot a bullet that would land anywhere near a city, if you shot it into the air, if you live far enough, 24 miles or more away from a large city, did you get polled? Anybody poll you? I haven't been polled in 50 years, and that sounds a little bit racy. They don't poll people in the country. They poll people in the cities and the suburbs. That's the only people they're asking. And that's all they did back in the 1800s and the 1700s when they tried to find out how long people lived. It was city people who threw their crap bowls out the window when they were from the second or third floor in the city when they were full. Of course they died when they were 35. We have no idea how long people lived who lived in West Virginia or who lived in the hinterlands of Europe that never saw a city. Lived pretty long. Not even going to consider the fact that we now erase all the people that live to be zero. What I mean is when you kill, I don't know how many tens of millions in the womb, you don't count those numbers. It really does skew your numbers upwards. A lot of things going on. So here's the thing you got to realize. You cannot continue to stare through this box at what's happening in the cities and rue your country and rue your culture as if somehow what you're seeing is some loss. I don't remember who it was. It may have been the Cross of Gold speech. I can't remember, but in one of the great speeches in history, the comment was made that you could burn the cities to the ground, every one of them. In a short amount of time, they would sprout back up. But if you burn the countryside down, if you destroy agriculture, if you destroy the yeoman farmer, the people in the cities will starve to death and will be eating their young. And we've seen it. We've seen it in our own lifetime, all over the world. It happened in Rome. It happened in Jerusalem. It happened in Europe. It's happened all over the world. When you look at wars, when you look at the historical destructions that have happened that have caught the imagination and the minds of historians and readers, you're looking at what's happened in cities and because of cities. Most of the wars of history didn't have to happen, and had they not happened, things still would have turned out all right. Very few wars can you find any really positives that came out of it. Very few. Even those that are imagined, quite often those positives were already on their way to happening and would have happened in time anyway. World War I is a great example of a war that didn't have to happen. Nobody really thought it was going to happen. And when it happened, nothing good came from it. And the only thing that came from it was really, really bad stuff, the partitioning of Europe and everything that led up to World War II. World War II, I'll give you that one. That was probably a worthwhile war. Have time to think about it. Most of the wars of history, not necessary. And so here's the thing. The one that's about to happen, the one that's happening right now, but it's just now and it's birthing belches, it's one that has to happen. And it's probably going to happen. Not something that I want, not something that I ever want to see, not something that I want to live through, but it's going to happen, and it probably has to happen. Otherwise, history is going to repeat itself. And that history will be repeated only on a magnified scale. The amount of death that even could be meted out in the Soviet Union shortly after the revolution. The amount of death that it led to 30 to 60 million within the first 5 or 10 years of communist rule. That was based on some pretty rudimentary weapons. Population was way, way, way lower. Can you imagine those same people, the Trotskys of the world, in charge of modern weapons? With a population of 375 million people just in this country? And this thing's going to spread all over the world unless somebody steps in to stop it. So I'm not trying to be negative. What I'm trying to do is keep you focused. You need to be preparing. You need to be taking care of yourself and your family. You need to see how you've sold out your own responsibilities and your own rights. Where you live means a lot. And it's going to mean a lot as to whether or not you're going to survive what's coming. It's just the facts. I hate to say it, but the more I watch and the more I see what's going on, the more I realize I don't see a way out. I just don't see it. And I want to see it, and I'm looking for it. Why are people pinging me? People, it is 7:33. I'm doing a radio show. Why are people? Hold on just a minute. I'm going to find out who this is. Don't ping me. Somebody out there messing with me. It's my children. It's my children. All right. I'll get off of that. In Africa, not too long back, they killed millions of folks with nothing more than machetes and axes. Yes, Rwanda. During the Clinton years. I wrote a lot about that, studied a lot about it. The parallels are eerie to Rwanda. It was a racial issue. Both the Hutus and the Tutsis were black, but the Tutsis were lighter skinned. Had a tendency to be wealthier, more educated. Just a fact about that place. The Hutus had been radicalized over several years. And the point got to where the radio stations were broadcasting, kill the Tutsis, kill the Tutsis, kill the Tutsis, just over and over and over and over. It was on the radio all the. It had gone past the stages that we were at years ago, where some people were just trying to fire up racial animosity. They were in the stages where we are now, where they're actually saying, take their property, take their things, kill them and their children, etc. They killed 800,000 in, I think, less than 100 days, if I remember right, with machetes and axes. Yep, hand grenades too. There were some hand grenades. If you ever got an opportunity to read a book called "I Regret to Inform You That Tomorrow We Will Be Killed with Our Families," that's the title of the book, about Rwanda. And that's the type of thing we're going to see if something doesn't happen that I am incapable of seeing what would have to happen. Our goal is to mitigate the danger, prepare, stabilize, evangelize, do what you can to help people think properly. Stop jumping onto the wrong side or onto a side just because you are being aggravated by professional propagandists. Yeah, the famine always comes, and so does the disease after the war. But it's time to prepare yourself, at least mentally. So the question was asked, what about the suburbs? First of all, I'm not talking about small towns. I'm not talking about villages. I'm not talking about small little places like that. I mean, suburbs, depending what you mean and where. Suburbs can be very. There are suburbs between Dallas and Fort Worth. They're every bit as city as any place else. So calling a suburb is really a misnomer. If you're in a suburb that touches on the countryside where you would have an escape route, perhaps. But for the most part, the problem is the dependency, the interdependency that happens in cities, where it's impossible to produce, it's impossible to prepare properly, it's impossible to provide for yourself the security and safety of your family. It's just impossible. I think that's my children. I'm going to have to mute this. They're having a conversation. Somebody should tell them, hey, you're interrupting your dad's show, but I can turn the volume down. Probably. Somebody probably has some software and they just got my PIN number to silence my phone from the sound. All right, everybody, I'm here for your questions and comments. I'm sorry to be such a downer today, but you get what you come for. Hey, if you're out there, make sure you hit the like button. I'm here for you. And if you could be here for me, go to YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. Comments are important. All right, so I'm here for questions if you have any. I'm drinking this is a Gatorade bottle, was just water. Yeah. We used to live right between Dallas and Fort Worth. We lived in Arlington for a little while. We lived technically in Fort Worth, but it was actually right between. It was right in the kind of Irving area, and then we lived in North Dallas for a while. But it was all city. There was no getting out if things went bad. I'm in a little bit of allergies, but not much. It's been nice out, 93 degrees today, 94, maybe a little humid. I got a fan going on me, so it's not too bad. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you. I'm not seeing any questions or comments come in. I'll give you another minute or two, and if we don't have any, then that'll be it. I hope you learned something. There's so much more that I could talk about on this topic. I could do an entire history and prophetic history of the city. But I did a lot of that in Surviving Off-Grid. So you can learn a little bit about it there. You got smoke from California rolling in there. Man, I hate to see all that. You know, it's going to happen when it gets dry and you end up with a lot of underbrush and they don't let you log in those areas, etc. How will Alaska be affected by this? Probably very little. Most of the people in Alaska, I would say most, are pretty independent and pretty self-sufficient. At least quite a few of them are. You might have some problems in the cities. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. You might have some problems in the city. The biggest problem is that a good number of resources, if you're not able to provide for yourself year-round, which a lot of people in Alaska are not because of the weather, a lot of the resources come from the U.S., and I know it's part of the U.S. I'm just saying from the mainland. Hava, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. But when all of your resources come from someplace else, that can be a very, very difficult road. So for the people in Alaska who are self-sufficient, if you can make it through the winters without going to stores or maybe never seeing a store again, then you could be doing all right. Fences, what kind do you think are best? It depends on what you're trying to hold. If you're trying to hold in water, that's different than trying to hold in chickens. We use wrapped wire, and depending on what type of animal you're going to have, no fence is going to hold a goat or an ambitious pig unless you can put electric fence in, and we can't because we're too dry. If it won't hold water, it won't hold a goat that wants to get out. But they have goat welded wire, 4 to 5 feet tall. That is, the squares are smaller on the bottom and bigger on the top. What you don't want is the animal to be able to put its head through the fence to eat what's on the other side, because that will destroy your fences. You also don't want the horses to be able to lean on the fence to get what's on the other side, because that will destroy your fences. As far as fencing to keep out bad people, unless you have rolls of razor wire, you're probably going to have to be able to shoot from far, far away. Potatoes, carrots, moose, and caribou meat. I would be practicing now, though, Ethan. And fish. That's right. You got a lot of fish. A lot of people have survived in Alaska for a long, long, long time. I think it's probably at okay. I don't want to be there because I don't like the weather, and I don't like the bugs, and I don't like the seasons. But other than that, for the people who are into that, that's a great place to be. Any place where you can be more than distance is the absolute best fence. That's right. And very deep holes, randomly. It's frustrating and amazing that law enforcement basically do nothing to stop them when they are looting, burning down businesses, which I hear they're told to stand down by local elected officials. That's true. But see, that's what I'm saying. You farmed out, if you live in a city, you farmed out your security and your safety to these people, but they don't owe you anything. They're not answerable to you. It's a natural result of that living condition. Somebody is going to extort money from you to do the things that you refuse to do for yourself. I'm talking about if you live in a big city. It is frustrating and amazing to watch it, but we also have to get to the point where we realize it's not our business. It's not our business. Everybody that's living there chose to live there. And if you tell me that you chose to live in a city, but you didn't think that riots and things like that were possible, have you not watched television since 1994? Did you watch television in 1968? 1977? 1987? 1994? The thing is that riots have happened all the time and all through history. Cocoa made in every single socialist revolution, every single one, the new state sent legions of troops to seize control of agriculture to provide for the ruling assessment, and the city populations aligned with them. What followed again, in every single instance, the mass killing or engineered famine against the groups of people seen as the opposition. Yes, that's true. Most of those cases, too, those people were disarmed beforehand. In the case of Russia in particular, The countryside had already been massively damaged after the end of the serfdom. And there were several machinations that had happened, not machinations, machinations that had happened after that sent a lot of the farmers' children west to be educated and those type of things. So a lot of things. My light went out. That's a signal. That's a signal from the city. I gotta go. Anyways, that is true. It's not the only truth, but it is true what David said. All right, y'all. You know what I think? You don't hear about riots in the hinterlands. Disarming the populace keeps the folks from resisting. Are the riots now worse? In some ways, they are. In quite a few ways, they are. First of all, in the absolute handcuffing of the law enforcement, they're certainly new. That did happen in Germany and a few other places where the riots like these were intended and were bringing about something that the deep state or the people who were pulling the strings wanted. But if you go back to 1968 or you go back to 1994, the riots, they were fairly contained and the police were pretty active. And although in some cases for their own safety, they might have pulled back, they usually reorganized and went back into most of those areas. And the riots didn't last that long. How much impact do you think these things will have on the delivery system, truckers, warehouses? It's going to eventually have a great impact because remember, what I'm talking about is not random or widespread riots in cities. We are in a war. You need to get that straight in your mind. We're not seeing some social unrest. A war has already been declared on you. You're just not in it yet. So you're seeing a war. And eventually that war will move to stopping trucks on the highways, to commandeering trucks and burning down the businesses, warehouses, those type of things. And so this is already beginning. We're already seeing the beginnings of it. A lot of these things that are happening are not accidental. Given the proliferation of privately owned firearms in the U.S., how do you think our situation today stacks up with revolutionary disarmament of the past? I absolutely think you have the capacity to resist, and we've seen that in just in the last couple of decades. We've seen it in Afghanistan. We've seen it in other places where armed rural populations have been able to resist not just disarmament, but resist the largest, most powerful, most technologically advanced armies in the world. Not in particular battles, but over a long enough time that the enemy has to withdraw. Russia learned this lesson in Afghanistan. I think that that's really one of the great saving graces of what's going on, is that the U.S. does have a fairly robust, independently owned firearms culture. It's the integrity of the people that I have my doubts about. The integrity and the willingness. If they are not willing right now, watching what's going on, to at least prepare, to at least get themselves ready, then they're not going to be willing. When the time comes, they won't do what they ought to do. All right. Did I miss any? Hey, everybody, I appreciate you. We're 49 minutes in, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. We'll carry this on maybe in another one. Hope you guys are all doing well. Remember that I love you. Lord willing, I'll see you. If not tomorrow, maybe the next day, but I will see you when I see you. From Grizzly territory, where there's no Grizzlies. I appreciate you. I'm Michael Bunker. I'll talk to you soon.